Hi everyone, my name is Pasan, and today I want to talk to you about raising your profile. Whether you're an indie developer, a freelancer, or you work for someone else, it's always important to highlight your skills, past experience, and knowledge in such a way that you'll always be open to new opportunities. Today, we're going to talk to Sam Soffes. Sam is an iOS developer who's been in the game a long time. He's worked as a freelancer, he's worked for startups, and he's worked for big companies. Today, let's talk to him and hear what he has to say about raising your profile for someone who's new to the tech world. So, Sam, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this with us. My inaugural interview. And for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself. And by a little bit, I mean a lot.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I'm a iOS developer living in San Francisco. Do you want just like the whole story?
Yeah, from
Okay.
the beginning.
Sure. So in high school, I was doing Mac apps just like for fun.
Okay.
And then the iPhone SDK came out. And I was like, well, this looks amazing because I kind of sort of know how to do this. So started doing that. Made an app called Bible. That's pretty popular at my first job. And then did some freelance for a bit, moved around. And now I'm here in San Francisco. And I was at a company called Seesaw, but now I'm freelancing. So, I guess in there I made Cheddar, which was pretty popular for a bit. It's like a Mac iOS web app for to-dos. I don't know. I've done a lot of stuff.
So let's start at the beginning, right? How did you learn to code? You said you started off doing Mac apps. So how did you learn to code and why? It sounds like you kind of taught yourself.
Yeah. So way back in like fifth grade, I was like 10 years old.
Wow.
My local ISP was having HTML classes, which is pretty hilarious. It's like
Wow.
nothing that happens anymore. But my mom wanted to like learn how to make websites, so she's like, "Well, let's go." And didn't have a babysitter, so I tagged along. And she didn't really like get into it, but I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" So I started like doing HTML and Notepad like way back in the day. Um, and then I got a Flash 5 demo some point along the line. I don't know. Someone was talking about it. Or I saw it. I was like, "What is this Flash thing?" So I got a demo. And I wrote my first like if statement in ActionScript in like Flash 5. Just like from tweening a ball, like stupid stuff.
Right.
And I guess took a C++ class in high school, which wasn't actually, the teacher didn't really know anything, but it was still like pretty cool to just like encouragement and like, we'll figure this out together. So did that for a bit and then picked up PHP because I wanted to make like better websites for clients. And that's very similar to like the C syntax. So I was like, oh, this is easy enough. Like it's all similar to like ActionScript. It was like, okay, like this is all kind of the same, just more dollar signs. And then went to a Apple event in Atlanta. I was living in Kentucky at the time, so drove down with a friend. Just because like I was an Apple fan, didn't really like know Apple development, and they were showing off all their tools, and I was like, "This is incredible!" So like bought a book and like taught myself Mac stuff, just because I wanted to, because I liked Apple stuff. So
I completely understand that. Now, where'd you get your start in, say, iPhone development? What prompted you to jump onto that platform, and how did you teach yourself there? So, for our students out there, who are teaching themselves iPhone development and iPad development through us, like what prompted you? How did you go about, teaching yourself how to code, and then kind of translating that into, what you do now?
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing when learning anything is just like doing it. So like I wanted to make a Mac app after seeing the Apple stuff at that demo. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna like buy a book and figure this out and like go make something. So I had like a project in mind and like went and made it. And same for the iPhone. Like we were just talking at my job, and I was like, well, why don't we like make an app? And I was like, yeah, why don't we like make the Bible? And I was like, all right, easy enough. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, okay, like my first, like interface builder wasn't even there yet. It was like, from the very beginning, it was like super hard to do anything. I was like, all right, well, I'll figure it out, and like spent 6 months and like just fought through it. Like had no idea what I was doing. The first version was probably really terrible.
So that was your very first app that you did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Wow. And to, for those who are listening, to put this in perspective, that's been downloaded well over millions and millions of times now, right?
100 million. Yeah, they just had their big like party a couple weeks ago,
How
months ago
cool.
now.
So kind of like walk us through that experience. There's, I think one of the biggest things for our students is that, sometimes they'll go through a tutorials and then wonder where to go next. So back then, when you were starting on your first project, when you got stuck, what did you do? How did you teach yourself?
Yeah, it was tough because there was like by law you weren't allowed to talk about it because it was still like hadn't been released, so you couldn't even talk to anyone. Um, so like yeah, it was really hard because I couldn't like there wasn't great resources like Treehouse and Stack Overflow, and so I guess I would just when I was stuck on something, I'd try to understand more about the problem and less of like there's an error and I don't know what it means and I'll Google it and get no results. I was like, well, crap. It was more like, okay, like what did I do recently to like get me in this spot? I'll just try to like work backwards and understand more. I mean, I think a big mistake a lot of people can make early on when learning something is like, cool, I want to understand like everything there is to know, and then I'm going to start. They treat it like like a college or something, and I think that's a really terrible way to start. Like, especially iPhone or Rails or whatever you're learning. Like, they're huge, vast frameworks, and it would take you like years to understand them. And then by the time like it'd all be different. Like it's a huge waste of time. But I guess when you're stuck on something, it's like it helps to like get a little more context to understand like more about what you're stuck on. Um, so I don't know. There's a balance to like trying to understand all of it, but I guess when I was yeah, I'm trying to remember back. Like I would just walk around and like I have no idea and like think about it for a bit. Like oh maybe I'll try this and it happened to work or didn't work or
So it
whatever.
was very much, getting stuck, figuring out that one block, and then moving on, getting stuck again, and kind of progressing from there.
Yeah, it was very it was very slow and tedious. I mean, and even when I'm the way I learn anyway is trial and error. So when I'm doing anything new, I was just like, well, I'll try this. Well, it didn't work. All right, I'll try this. Oh, okay. Um, and eventually I'll get it. So I mean, I think doing is the best way to learn something than like just trying to like understand all of the book knowledge doesn't really, I mean, personally, that doesn't do anything for me. I'd rather just get in there and like play with it.
Absolutely. Now, with all this experience that you have, is it any different, or do you still kind of work through, get stuck, and
Yeah.
just it's kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like now it's way easier because there's so many resources. Um, I mean, and iOS specifically, or whatever else, is like a huge. There's a huge amount of things to know, and it's impossible to remember it all. So like, I'll find myself. I've done this a bunch of times. Found something on Stack Overflow and like went to comment like this is exactly perfect. Like this is the best answer, and then like saw a comment from me like years ago with the exact. It was like oh, well,
Funny.
all right. So like I don't know. I mean, I search for stuff all the time because I can't remember um, how to do. So if I'm learning something new, like all the new stuff in like iOS 7's like obviously no one has any experience with it because it's brand new, or whatever else. It's like okay, well I'll just sit down and like spend a couple hours and like learn it by like playing with it and making a little demo app or something. So
So the theme of this discussion, that because you have a lot of experience in this area, is how to raise your profile, right? So now you've come a long way from when you first started. You have a lot of great apps, Share, Bible, shares rather. Um, how kind of walk us through that? What specific steps do you take? What advice do you have for people who are teaching? Okay, they've taught themselves how to code. What's the next step? Because now the store isn't just about the gold rush is kind of over. You got to put a lot of effort into especially if you're doing indie development like you are, to raising your profile, and being able to market these apps. So kind of walk us through that.
yeah, so personal branding I think is really important, and it's something I've spent a lot of time on. Um, I didn't just like stumble upon like whatever position I have in the community. I like it's been there's like intentional effort put into that. Which sounds weird to like I'm gonna try to be famous today, like, but I mean
Right.
it really pays off as far like because I can tweet something and get like 1,000 clicks pretty easily, which is like really powerful. Um, which is crazy because like TechCrunch or something has like hundreds of thousands of followers or a million, I don't even know, tons. But they'll tweet something, like I've had them like write a story about something I've worked on and got like, a couple hundred clicks. And I was like, this is insane. Like people that are into me are really engaged in like what I have to say, which is flattering. Like pretty cool. So, I guess one of the reasons people like respect me, this sounds like so arrogant, this whole thing, but, is like open source stuff. Cause I've put out a ton of open source libraries. And that was kind of my start. Some of that stuff like came from code that was in Bible, like, way back in 2008. So, and all that's probably terrible, but I've been doing it like since the beginning. Like, well, I wrote some stuff that I'm going to use in another app. Like, why not let everyone use it instead of just like hoard it all? And people seem to really like it and like, oh yeah, you saved me all this time. Like, thanks so much. So I think that's where like the start of it came from, but I'm like super open about everything. So like there's
Yeah,
like
I've seen your DNA analysis.
yeah, you can totally go download my DNA on GitHub. There's like 3 or 4, I don't even know, founders talk interviews. They're like an hour and a half each, and it's like my entire life story from like when I was like super depressed or like it's long. Anyway, so like I talk about pretty much everything. So I think a lot of people find that refreshing, and I'm not like, some people on their online persona like, take a lot of time and like thought into like what they're gonna say and how they're gonna project themselves. And I don't really do any of that. I just kind of like, well, here's what I'm doing. Like today, I hate my client work, so that sucks.
You kind of let your work speak for
Yeah,
yourself, right? Like,
exactly. So I work really hard on what I work on, and I try to make it really good. And some people like appreciate it, and some people, I get people all the time. It's like, oh, this guy's stupid. His stuff is terrible. And I was like, ah, whatever. I don't care.
so first, yeah, one question is that you are both a designer and a developer, right?
Want to be a designer? Yes.
Yeah. So talk about that. How has that helped? What you do. Is it essential to kind of know those skills? Say you, kind of the baseline for all these questions is like you've taught yourself how to code. So is that set of skills essential as well to creating this career path for yourself, or?
Yeah. So I'm not a great designer. I can make some stuff that I'm like really happy with, and some stuff I'll just like, this is total. It's terrible. So I was like, okay, I got to find someone to help me. And so you're saying the gold rush is over, right? And that's a really big shift from 5 years ago, which like if you had the first anything, like people are gonna go download it because that's all that's all there was. Now there's like there's probably not any like super new game changing ideas. There's a million Twitter clients. If you want to make a Twitter client, you got to make like a really special Twitter client, and that's kind of the thing with like any kind of app. And a lot of that is like if it's really pretty and has a good icon. And a lot of developers starting out like don't have like design skills, and that's fine because like it's really like 2 completely different skill sets. So like partnering with a designer, I think is a really good move you can make from the beginning. And I do a ton of apps with other designers. I work on Rune with Drew Wilson and like a couple other apps coming out with designer friends because I'm not skilled enough to design them. But I know like if I was to do it, it wouldn't be good, and like there's no point in putting out something that's terrible. And unless you're just learning and want to just test the waters. But for me, I want to put out stuff that's excellent. So I'm going to work with the designer to help me. And I find that having designed stuff myself, it's a lot easier to see, where they're coming from, and to like, everyone I work with, I have a lot of feedback, and like, we'll work together on it. Like they'll do all the actual work. But I was like, why don't we try this? And like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, And coming at that together, even if I was on the other end of that as a designer, like having feedback is essential. So like working with someone I think is really fulfilling, on the developer end, as well as like, having the end result that's pretty is like, really important. So I don't know. I feel like does that answer the question?
No, yeah, that was no. So to kind of summarize, like it really helps you kind of work together as a team because you understand their frustrations and their workflow, and you can kind of gel better, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that designers that, especially like if they've like a really great designer but they've never done iOS before and they're doing an iOS app, it's like, oh, this is gonna be really painful because they don't understand like all the intricacies of like touch devices and whatnot, or whatever. Like an experienced designer, or especially a designer that can code, is like amazing because they'll have the same thing right back, and you can work really well together. Like on Rune, it's a blogging app I run. The designer is also, he does all the HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and stuff. So we work really well together because he understands where I'm coming from, I understand where he's coming from, and we can just like get stuff done. So um, if you're just starting out, like finding a designer friend would be like a huge thing to just like work on some stuff together because it also keeps you motivated. I mean, there's just a ton of good benefits. So I'm a big fan.
Cool. So you taught yourself iOS development and then got a job in it, or kind of had a job and then taught yourself iOS development while you were at the job?
Yeah, so I was doing PHP at Life Church, which is where I was
Okay.
working after high school. Um, from just like messing with, I did a couple client apps, and um, a guy hired me to make a YouTube ripoff, which was pretty hilarious. It was like totally out of my league, but it was like a time. It was, I mean, like not to get too sidetracked, but like he's like, "Hey, can you make this?" And I was like, "Well, sure." Like having no idea how to do it, but I was like,
Okay.
"I'm gonna learn and figure it out," and like learn by doing. It's totally really good. But anyway, so I was doing PHP, and then iPhone came out, and I was like, "Well, I kind of know Objective C. Like, why don't we make something?" So I got to spend. I was really fortunate. I got to spend 6 months working on it, like as my job, and not having to like work do it on my free time. So that was really great. But I totally, so I do a ton of Ruby on Rails stuff as well, and I learned that like in my free time, shortly after like my first app came out. So I think the difference between like learning during your full time job and learning like in your free time is that learning in your job is not really like any sorts of like cost. You can just kind of like like I'll just mess around and like learn all this stuff for the fun of it, and that's like great. And like if you can get paid to learn, that's like incredible. But learning like on my own, I was like, okay, I want to make this thing and I don't know how, so I'm going to do everything it takes to make this thing kind of as quickly as possible because I don't have a ton of time. Um, so I mean, I think the sense of urgency, just because like your time is limited, um, helps. It's definitely a different way to learn something. So
Interesting. Now, say I know how to code and I'm looking to get a job in iOS development. What do you recommend as some of the steps I can take to raise my profile? Do I kind of work on side projects, or do I try to build apps on my own to kind of showcase the skills that I have? What are some of those ways that, our students can land a job once they've learned these skill sets?
when I was at Scribs, we were hiring like crazy, and I interviewed tons and tons of iOS developers. So from that, like, because there's just so many candidates, I had to like, okay, like here's a set of rules, and I'm just gonna like eliminate people. So basically, if you'd only ever had one job doing like, if you got a job as an iOS developer and you've only ever worked on one thing, and you apply somewhere else, like I'm not gonna hire you because you probably can't do anything on your own, and you're just gonna rely on the people that are there that are like better than you. Um, and like I wanted people that are like more self-sustaining. If you've never done any side projects, I probably wouldn't hire you because finishing a project, like the last 10% of anything, is like really hard and not fun at all. And I'm really bad. I mean, everyone's really bad at it because it's just not fun. You just gotta like finish all the things and fix the last bugs you've been putting off. So showing that you can like finish and ship is like really important. So if you've done like at least an app, even if it's like not amazing, like just something on the store sets you way above like tons of people that have just like never really finished anything. Open source is really huge. If you've like contributed anything on GitHub, or if you have your own stuff that people are using, that's like really huge. That sets you like way above a whole other big class of people. So like my ideal candidate is someone that's done freelance for a while, because freelance is really great because you have to try a bunch of different things. Like for example, none of my apps until recently had ever needed to use MapKit, but one of my clients needed to use MapKit. I was like, oh, I'll go learn MapKit. Like you learn a bunch of stuff you'd never have to know, or like audio toolbox, like stuff I was like obscure things I would never like need to know, but I needed it
Right.
for a client app. So having done freelance gets you like you touch a lot of different things, and that's really great. And you have to like finish and ship because people are paying you. Um, so like I mainly look for people that can finish and have done a bunch of things and show that they can work independently. So like tangibly, that's side projects and open source. So
Okay, now, going back to what you said, that an ideal candidate would have had some freelance experience. So that was the second question I was going to ask you. How can one go about getting that experience now. So you're an indie developer, and you kind of do things on your own. How hard is it to do something on your own, or you've done client work as well. You've done it all, right? So how let's talk about some of those like non-employer roles. How hard is it to be an indie developer and kind of make money? Just touch upon that. I know these topics are really vast, but and then secondly, freelance work. What should someone who just learned how to code? Uh, where should they look? How can they land freelance gigs? That kind of stuff.
So the biggest thing transitioning from a salary to not having a salary, which is probably like, it's kind of terrifying the first time you do it, is having a big enough buffer. So I was fortunate enough, my first big freelance thing after I left my first full-time job paid me like half down, or I always do everything half down. I think because of this, I don't know. So it was enough money that I could like pay my rent for like a couple months and have time to finish this project. And then, like, I got the check and stuff like, the week I was quitting, and it was like amazing. Like, no financial stress.
Perfect setup.
Yeah, it was really great. So if you can make that happen, that's really huge. Otherwise, you just have to like bankroll yourself and like save up and hope you find something. And if you've never found a freelance gig before, probably not the best idea. But and even like recently, switching from being full time at Seesaw to back to freelance and indie. I had work lined up before I left and had down payments like before my salary ended. That was enough to cover me for a couple months. So that's the biggest thing, like just solving the financial stress. And then once you get beyond that, it's like staying motivated is really important, because like, oh, I don't have, especially if you've never done it before, like, oh, I don't have a job. No one's making me do anything. Like, cool. I'm not going to put on pants for a week because I don't have to, like, the first time I freelanced, I didn't leave my house for like several weeks on end once. Like, only saw the pizza guy. I got a notice from the city, like I had to mow my lawn. I was like, okay, this is a problem. I was like 19 though, so I guess it's okay. But anyway, yeah. So I guess as far as finding stuff, I'm fortunate enough I've never really had to like deal with that, just because my first app was so high profile, and I've worked on a bunch of other things since. So I have a page that says hire.soff.es, and it has like all my rates and my availability, and people seem to really love like how transparent that is. So I get a ton of stuff. I even get people just email me like, hey, I can't afford you, but I really love your page. And I was like, thanks, this is cool.
Oh, cool.
So I think charging the right amount is important. And I think, not to be like, hopefully this doesn't like date this, but 125 I think is like the lowest you should ever go. Even if you've like never done anything before ever. Like, iOS is a really like sought after skill, and not many people can do it, like relative to the population or even the people that have iPhone ideas. So you should like charge what you're worth, and even if you've never done anything before, as long as you can like push through and finish, 125 an hour is acceptable. And I mean, I charge 300 now, but like I was doing 150 and 200 for like a really long time. I only did 300 like till recently. So that's really like exciting, I think, and will hopefully keep you motivated through the terribleness. Like, well, I'm getting paid enough to like push through, because clients are terrible, right? Like, I mean, we can talk about how to pick a good client, but I guess as far as finding people, like you may do like an app or two, especially if you've never done one for hire. Just like find someone. Like I had a friend, he actually works at Apple now, but there was like a local brewery, and they like had all these like different beers or whatever, and it was like, hey, well, I'll make an app for you to like showcase your different beers, and when you add new ones, it can like update the app. And they're like, oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Like, you're just gonna give it to us? And I'm like, yeah, like I like your stuff. Like, you don't have an app, like let's do it. And they're like, oh yeah, this is amazing. And he just like did it all, and that was like one of his first projects. So that kind of thing, I think, is a good place to start, just to like practice working with someone and, finishing. Like, those are really hard things on their own that have like nothing to do with development. So if you're not comfortable like charging someone, that's probably a really good place to start, is to do something for free, just to like put it out there. More apps in your portfolio, which will help you like either get a full-time job or find more clients. I have something that you should totally do. I have on my iPhone, my last home screen is all the apps I've worked on. So when people are like, hey, what have you done? I'm like, this. And they're like,
How cool.
oh man, this is crazy. You have a whole home screen. I was like, that's right. And it like blows
That's a
minds.
great idea.
I had someone offer me a job on the spot when I showed them that. It was like, cool, when can you start? It's like, I don't want to work for you. Thanks though. So building up your portfolio is really important because it like blows minds when you show it to people. So yeah, sorry, that was like super long-winded.
Oh no, not at all. So now you're an indie developer, right?
Well, most of my income comes from freelance, but I do have a lot of projects I work on. The dream is to like, make money on my own
Right.
apps, but that's probably a ways off.
So what prompted you to kind of go into that?
It's something I've always wanted to do, and I've done it. This is my third time being self-employed, and I'll usually like run out of money or like get angry with like dealing with clients, and like, okay, I'll go get a job. And I was at my last job, and like really like the people, and enjoy what we were working on, but I was like, you know what? I'm just not passionate about like making a social network or all of this stuff. Like, I'd rather work on my own products. And most of my products, or all of my products really, have nothing to do with like social networking. It's more like utilities that solve problems that I have. That was what I was excited about, and that's not what I was doing. And I was like, well, there's no reason to like sit here and like spend all this time working on stuff that, I'm not super passionate about. And because I want to give them my best work and I want to do my best work, and it's not really helping anyone, So I was like, well, I'll just leave and do my own stuff because that's what I want to do, and like, there's no reason not to. So I found a client that was a friend and paid me half down, and I quit and did my thing, and that was that. So now I spend a lot of time working on my own projects. I still spend the majority of my time on freelance, unfortunately, but hopefully I can start to, lower that time as I charge more. So
Right. Now, so your company's called Nothing Magical?
yeah, sort of. That was for Cheddar. So I
Okay.
founded it. It's Nothing Magical Incorporated. It's like an actual like incorporation in Delaware, which taxes are the worst. But I'm really bad at that side of things. Anyway, so that was like what I started, and I was like trying to get funding, like investment for Cheddar, and didn't really work out since no one's like you're just like this kid by yourself. Like, we don't really want to like give you all this money. And I was like, all right, that's fair, I guess. So I didn't really like go after it, and mainly the reason is like VCs want you to have like $1 billion business, and like Cheddar wasn't $1 billion business. It was just something that was making money and people really liked, and that's not exciting to most investors. So
Sadly.
yes, it's very sad. But anyway, that's it.
Yeah, separate episode, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so it kind of just sat there and was like Cheddar paid for Cheddar and took the money from Cheddar, and that's pretty much it. And now like it pays Rune and a couple other things go through it, but most of my contracting is just like me personally. I don't know. I'm still like in a branding crisis. I need to figure out what I'm doing, but anyway, I have a couple other things. Some friends and I are talking about starting a company pretty soon, so I may like just ditch it all together and move everything. I don't know. I gotta figure it out. But
So the interesting thing, that I'm getting out of this conversation is you're very open to change and kind of embrace it, and are quick to like try out different things. How important is that in this landscape that's changing so quickly?
so the plan was I was like enrolled in college and was gonna go, and then got a job at Life Church, and like that was in Oklahoma, and I grew up in Kentucky, and I was like, cool, well, I'm just gonna move to Oklahoma and not go to college. And my mom was like, like what? How? And I was like, whatever. It shouldn't be that bad. So that's what I did, and it was fine. And I've made like huge changes, like randomly. I was like, I'm gonna move to Texas and get a job. So like moved to Dallas, and then most recently, I guess like the most notable change is I quit my job. Got married and moved to California, like all in like a weekend, like
Wow.
in August. So that was a good time. But anyway, like, that's what I was getting at. So like, if I had gone to college 4 years, like, so that was like before iOS came out. It was like the summer before. So I would have like finished college and they like surely wouldn't have been teaching iOS, at all. So I would have
What'd
like
you
got
go to
out.
college for, if you don't mind me asking?
It was enrolled for
Or
computer science,
okay.
but I mean, I almost went back a couple years ago. I was like, okay, I'll actually go to college, and was gonna go back for like philosophy or something like that, something silly, not like computer science. Because going to school for computer science is a waste of time, in my opinion. But that's another big thing. Um, anyway, so like, had I not done that and like gone the plan, like I would have got out and not really known anything, and that's fine. I guess that has nothing to do with what I was getting at. Anyway, like, development changes so quickly. Here we go. So yeah, I think if you're opposed to change, you'll just like be stuck in the past. And for development, that's like a huge. That's really bad. So like, I had a job offer recently from a pretty cool company, and like everyone's awesome, super great opportunity, like amazing pay. And I met the developers, and they were still on a version of Rails from like 5 years ago, and I was like, "What's the deal with this?" And like, "Oh yeah, like it's really hard to change." And I was like, "Yikes! I don't want to work here at all." Like developers that hate change are like avoid that. Like you have to embrace it. Stuff changes. You can't be like you spend all this time learning iOS, and now like 5 years from now we're not using iOS. I mean, like I don't see that happening, but like whatever it is, like that's a really bad thing, because if you just stay in the past, like you'll just be left behind. Because like consumers don't care what the technology is; they just want to buy the new thing. Like,
Right.
So embracing change is really important, and not being like too married to like whatever language or technology you're using. Once you learn like how to code, and especially like if you learn two different languages, you've learned how to learn a language. The first time you're just learning like basics, and you can't really like abstract that away. But once you learn like a second language, you're like, oh, I kind of understand like an abstract sense of language, and then I can apply it to these two. Then you can like learn a language in a weekend, and that's like an amazing skill to have, and it's really important. So like change is really good, and you shouldn't fear it as a developer.
Yeah, I've noticed I think you've started playing with Android as well. You and Ben were tweeting back and forth.
Yes, I was gonna make Cheddar for Android a while ago, and I've had this like a couple times of like, I'm tired of iOS. I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I think Android's gonna be terrible, but I'll at least like try it out. And didn't really get very far. I started that same course like way back, and then downloaded Android Studio, and like I didn't understand how to like adapt the course to the stuff. So I was like, Ben was helping me. And he's like, "Isn't this great? Like Android's so fun." And I was like, "I waited 30 minutes for the emulator to start. Like this is not fun." But anyway. Yeah, like I started working on hardware recently. This is my biggest side project right now is hardware. And I know nothing about hardware or like circuits or any of that stuff. So it's really hard, and I don't know what I'm doing, but that's great. That's the place I want to be, cuz like there's only so many times I can hit an API and show some stuff in a table view. Like that's like every iOS app ever,
Right.
So I'm excited to like putting myself in a situation where I'm over my head and have to like push myself to learn is like really important, and it's easy to get in a spot where you're comfortable and you're like, okay, have a really good hang of iOS, and like you're not going to learn anything new for a long time. You're just going to like rinse and repeat all of your apps, and I don't want to be in that spot. So I'm trying to find things that
challenge you.
yeah, exactly. So
I don't want to take up too much of your time. So to wrap this up, if you had, advice for our students who've just learned how to code for iOS and want to do something from there, what's something, what's like on the top of your mind?
yeah, so especially if you've told your friends and family that, oh yeah, I can do iOS now because you're proud of yourself, which is great. They're like, oh, hold on, I have this idea. And you're like, oh, yes. Tell me, what's your idea? Okay, that's stupid. Occasionally we get one that's good, and if you're not working on anything, like I hear a lot of people that have just learned and are like, okay, go make something. Like that's what you have to do. And like, well, I don't have any ideas. Well, like there's tons of terrible ideas or like half good. Like just pick something and work on it. Like I can't.
Working on a terrible idea will still get you practice, right?
Exactly. Like I can't stress enough. Like going from like a bunch of apps that are just on your phone to like finishing something and putting it on the store is like a huge step, and it's not really like a development skill, but having like the self-control and discipline to like finish the last 10% is like so incredibly important. I've worked with a lot of people that can't do that, and it's the people I wouldn't hire again given the option. So, yes, learn how to ship because that's really important.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to do this, Sam. Now, what I've learned from this kind of is that you have lots to say. So I think we'll do more episodes in the future and kind of break it down to, freelance and all sorts of different things. But, for if anyone has any questions, where can they reach you?
I'm at Soffes on Twitter, and that's probably the best.
Cool. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks so much.